Aloha, my name is Anna Covert, and I'm coming to you from my battleship here on the beautiful island of Oahu. This week on the Covert Code, the topic is Leading with Fire, Turning Past into Purpose, and my special guest is Tony Martignetti, a change catalyst, best-selling author of Campfire Lessons and A Mountain to Climb. He's also an internationally recognized public speaker, coach, and the host of the Virtual Campfire Podcast. Tony is founder and chief illumination officer of Inspired Purpose Partners, where he works with tech leaders and change catalysts to make sure that they're on their path and not burning out. He's been recognized as a LinkedIn top voice and has worked with Fortune 500 company executives from 5 continents. He's here today to share some of his lessons that he helps leaders go through to identify past flashpoints and turn them into change and so that they can really live their best lives. So I'm really excited to have him here today on the show. Thank you, Tony.
Well, thank you for having me on, Anna. This is great. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
And I just got to say before we get started, I just love this title of Chief Illumination Officer, which I've never heard before, but I feel like, I need to maybe get a new title for myself too now. Just kidding.
You have to live into these titles, right? I mean, it's I used to, yeah, I think illumination is such an important part of where I'm headed right now and where people need more illumination. So we'll talk more about that.
Absolutely. So to kick us off, I like to start off every podcast with kind of like the Cliff Notes version of Tony, where you were and how you got to where you are today, so that we can use that as a jumping off point.
Wonderful. So my journey to getting to the work I'm doing now, I like to say went back when I was a child. I'll go quickly through those journeys. So I was an artist as a child, and there was something about the work that I was doing as an artist that leads to where I am today. I used to draw paintings and drawings that were about environments, worlds that evoked emotions. And so people saw this, the teachers and the people who were watching me evolve. They're like, this is really interesting stuff, not typical of a child of your age. They thought I would become an architect of some sort, and maybe that was a path that I would consider. But of course, I decided that I would get into medicine. So I was a pre-med major, who then decided, because it wasn't the right path, I decided to go into business. And so I ended up graduating with an undergraduate in business management, but then got into an MBA. Spent most of my career working in first high tech, then biotech. And it was a wonderful journey. And I spent 25 years in industry, but there was always something missing. And that missing piece was that I was doing something that I was really not meant for, but I could still do very well. It's like you can play the role, but are you really meant for that role? And it started to show up in burnout and depression, in the sense of really feeling this disconnection from who I am. And so that all came to a head when I was in a boardroom of a biotech company. I was, very successful, but I was feeling this sense of unfulfillment and
Separation, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, separation. And so I decided to leave the room, and I said to myself that I'm going to get up and walk out, and it's time for me to leave the room to change the room. And that's exactly what I decided to do. I decided to figure out a different path for myself that was connected with the artist, but also the connector, the person who I was known for is bridging between different people and making connections. Something I did on the side, if you will, of my job. So that led me to the work I'm doing now, which started as more coaching, facilitation, but now has morphed into something quite bigger than that. Writing books and creating communities. So yeah, that's the story in short.
Wow. I love it. It's a great story. And I think that is really the case, that you can't, once you commit to something or you decide that it's meaningful enough, and to make that change is really, really, it's kudos to you, because it can be very scary. And a lot of people, it's very Nietzschean of us to say, but they just kind of get stuck, and it's not what they meant to be. They're not what they, the creative chaos or what they should be doing, but they're afraid to take that jump. So I applaud you for recognizing it and moving into this new light that you're in now.
Yeah, and I think comfort becomes a blanket that you just kind of want to wrap around you and say, "Oh, I'm making good money and people respect me and all those things," but it can blind you from the very thing that's going to make your life more meaningful and maybe more purposeful in your own way. And so, luckily, I leaned into the discomfort of getting out into the world and doing something different. I think that's made all the difference. There's a quote I'll share, and then I'll open it up back up to you. Is this quote that drives me is that if you're willing to feel everything, you can have anything.
Mm.
That's from a gentleman by the name of Peter Bregman. And that led me to that period of like, gosh, I don't know where I'm headed right now, but I know that it's something that I need to lean into to have a life that's more aligned with who I am.
Wow, that's really beautiful. I got chills when you just said that because it is. It's like the frequency, right? And for all those meditators and whatnot, it's the pursuit of like people always say raising your vibration, which I don't gravitate toward because there's lower vibrations too. But it's just feeling it all, and that's the like how you really can guide yourself. So I think that's a really beautiful quote, and I'm really excited to learn more about your concept of the flashpoints, and because I think now, especially at the beginning of 2026. Everyone's always looking at, we know it's the when people stop drinking and they decide they're going to go to the gym and they're making all these aspirational kind of this year is going to be different, right? It's not
Yeah.
just and like it's easier when we have milestones to kind of loop in instead of just thinking of every day as a new day and opportunity of, so it's a great time to, can you walk us through how everyone who's listening can really lean into some of their past and what these flashpoints are and how we can use them now?
Well, thank you so much for that. I mean, there's what I haven't say always believe this because it's not the truth. What I've found is that as we look back into our past, oftentimes we're thinking, okay, I'm just moving forward. I don't want to look at the past. I want to just think about where I'm headed. But there's so much gold in looking back and in these flashpoint moments, as I call them, are the moments that have ignited our gifts into the world, but only if we're willing to really understand them and reconcile with them. And so when I think about those moments, it's really understanding, how did maybe a hardship or maybe something really good that happened to you unearth something in you that had you say, I can't live my life the way it was. I have to think about something differently. My world has changed. And that might not be a one moment and then you're changed. It could be something that was like a slow burn that eventually had you shifting your way of looking at your world. We have to learn through those moments, but sometimes we have to be able to understand that there's something on the other side that's waiting for us. And I'll give you a great example. I mean, I gave you some examples from my life, but I started to interview people on my podcast, The Virtual Campfire, and I saw that people would share stories of, you know, dark moments like suicidal ideation, or dealing with a cancer diagnosis, and then realizing that journey through cancer and going through treatment, and realizing that okay, this is dark. I don't know where I'm going to be heading. There's a lot of uncertainty, but having lived through this, I know that my purpose is now much clearer. I have something that I need to do with my life because I've now lived this moment. So those are the kind of things that I've started to see is that when people go through a dark moment, go through a moment that has changed them, they've realized that that moment has revealed to them that their progress going forward is going to be defined and maybe changed through that moment.
I mean, I think you're right, and I think for me, I had a one of those moments that I'll share, and I
Please.
didn't realize until much later that it was a moment, I guess one of these flashpoints to
Yeah.
me. But I had a back injury. My ex-husband accidentally, we were in New York, and he tripped in the escalator, and he grabbed me, and we both rolled down the whole escalator. And yeah, I mean, it was a miracle, right? That we were both like fine, we were walking. But after that, I came back to Hawaii and I was just doing my regular exercise. I was young, so I kind of had back pain, but I'm like, oh, I'll just push through it. And
No
the
biggie.
next day, right? Then I wore high heels at an event. And the next day I woke up and I like could barely walk, right? And I turned out I had herniated L4 and L5 in my back. And it was bad. I couldn't drive for like a year. And I was going to physical therapy. And I mean, I couldn't wear bras for like, I mean, a long time, right?
Yeah.
But it was during therapy because I was always working in advertising and I was working in an agency at the time. But when I went to college at Bentley, like we shared, went to college in Boston. They didn't have digital marketing, right?
Yeah.
I'm not that old, but this was 21 years ago, and we didn't have social media, which I'm grateful for. But websites were just virtual brochures and nothing more than that, right?
Yeah.
And so I was working in traditional advertising, and my therapist, the person who owned the therapy, she's like, "Oh, well, you're young," and she needed a new website. She's like, "You can build me a website, right?" And immediately I'm thinking to myself, no, right? But then I had a boyfriend at the time who was not the brightest star in the sky. He was very sweet and really hot, but he was just not, and he had just told me that WordPress was becoming a thing. And he was like, I'm installing WordPress websites. And I was like, really? Like, well, if you can do it, then anyone could do it, right? Because,
Yeah.
I mean, basically, great. So I told her, I'm like, I can, because I needed this therapy and I needed trade. And that
Mhm.
journey, that was the beginning of what brought me, I mean, all the way flash forward now to this best-selling book that I've written that Forbes published, right, about digital advertising. But it was, when I look back, it was that moment or that need that emerged and like the change of my direction, So I think yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And there's something about that you're utilizing, something from your past, but also knowing that that moment has changed your direction and it led to, writing a book is no small feat. And, it's like it's founded on the things you've done since that flashpoint moment. So,
Yeah.
uh,
So what
so
do you do? You take people back to like, so how does it work? I mean, how can people today practically, who are listening, right?
yeah.
Are almost 100,000 people who are listening right now. How can they, use this actionably, in their lives?
Yeah. So, I mean, I often think of it as like a time traveling exercise, right? Is element of, you putting yourself into this journey of, okay, who am I becoming? So it's almost like thinking about the future for a moment and how has who you're becoming, the future self, how is that being defined by, who you have been? And so that time traveling into the past is really about like thinking about the key moments in your life. What are the things that you've done that maybe you overlooked, um, that you thought was no big deal, or you're just like, I don't want to go back on that chapter. Don't look at it as reliving pain. Think of it as, what did I learn from that moment? What is the thing that I've constantly thought, no big deal, or I thought that was just something that was a dark moment for me, and I just don't want to go back. But it's really about going back and unearthing the actual lessons from each of those pieces. And it doesn't have to be like a day by day, like, when I was 10, I did this, when I did this, it can be like 3 or 4 moments that you find have led to where you are today. And that's where the present moment is like, what do you want to do with what you've learned about your past self and what you will use as you're thinking about who you're becoming. And that becoming piece is where the real value of what you've learned about your flashpoints becomes really critical. Let's say you are planning for a new career shift, a new pivot, or something that you're leaning into next. You want to understand, how has the past helped you think about that, or how can it help you? And so that's what the exercise is about, is really about using the time shift of going in the past, looking at the future, and then thinking about the present, and using those elements to really rethink what you're doing, as opposed to being on autopilot, which a lot of us end up doing. We tend to just continue to do the same thing and just go on autopilot. The pattern doesn't change.
Right.
Sometimes we need to step back, have a pattern interrupt, and allow that to change our trajectory.
That's like one of my favorite. I like Dr. Joe Dispenza. I'm not sure if you
Yeah.
know who he is, but he talks about like the familiar, the predictable, familiar past or predictable future.
Yeah.
And then and that's just you're on autopilot and you're a program. That's just you're gonna get the same thing you got because that's what you think you're gonna get. And you leave any room for this unknown, right? Or these new feelings or for what that feeling is like, that you draw to you, that you want to feel, it's back to your
Yeah.
feelings, right? So if you keep feeling the same things, you're gonna still be the same person.
Yeah, and here I am. I'm going to challenge you to challenge us to the next level, because this is where my work has been heading over the past few. Well, it has been going, but also heading in the future. Is that it's so much more than just unearthing something from the past. It's also looking at what have I, maybe put away that might be useful for how I'm showing up. And this is around identity. What's the identity that you maybe had that, you don't use anymore? A great example of this is someone who used to dance or someone who used to surf or whatever it may be. Those things that you used to do that made you feel alive might be the very thing that you need in your current capacity as whatever profession you're in that will allow you to show up more fully. And so that on going back into the past, that's where you're finding these past identities that you maybe don't see them as valuable, but they're the very thing that's going to help you feel more connected to your current work.
Oh, I love that.
So I mentioned the dancer, and I'll just say that, this quick story. I had an executive come to me and share her story about like, oh, I want to have more executive presence. And, I've been told that I need to be more, forceful, not forceful, but more of a voice in the room. And I said, well, when was the last time you felt most alive? And she said, well, I used to be a dancer. And when I was on stage, I used to feel so myself. I felt like everything could just fade away and I was just there. And I said, wow, what happens if you were to invite the dancer into the room and have her show up, not to take the main stage, but to be part of what you're already doing? And she started to do that in meetings and in with her team. And not only did she feel more alive for herself, but also her confidence changed. And people started to tell her, like, wow, what has happened to you? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's a great. That's great. I like. I'm a feeler, so I got like chills when you said that because I can see that.
yeah.
It's like that. Part of your identity, and I think that you're right. Like a lot of us, we think that, and it's weird that you would think that too. That like this small part of your life that actually becomes such a big part of your life, you just put away, like tuck it away, like oh, like it was all from my past. Well, that why right? Why can't it be something that you take into the future or elements of that feeling at least?
Exactly.
Not like you have to go back to dancing, but the feeling of the dancing or how you felt when you're dancing, kind of. That's the idea.
Yeah, and there's a concept from a philosopher um, who his name is Ken Wilber, and he says, "Transcend and include." And I think that really is relevant in this capacity, where you're saying you're not trying to go like say, "I'm going to rewind and just kind of live in the past." No, it's about including the past, but transcending it. It's using it. It's using it as a medium to also paint a new canvas and
Right. That's
to
like
put it.
the alchemy, right? You have to transmute and to transcend, right? You have to take it and like burn it to ash, and then it comes back alive in a new form. So it's just kind of like that whole story.
I love that's beautiful.
Alchemy.
I'm gonna remember that. That's really well said. Yeah.
Thank you. I can't take credit for it. It's like mystic teachings of the of the Hermetics, but yeah, no, I think it's makes sense. So tell me, as being a writer myself, and you're a writer,
Mhm.
when did you decide? Because I love the idea of the campfire, and I'm from Colorado now. I live here in Hawaii, but growing up, I just loved going camping with my friends and and standing around the campfire
Yeah.
and I just love that the feeling of that and the stories that are told. And so I really was resonating with when I was reading about you and your books, and I wanted to know when did you decide that you wanted to write a book, and how did this idea manifest?
Yeah. Well, campfires are for sure. Same thing here. I mean, I've always enjoyed being outdoors, and the campfire has always been a place where I've enjoyed conversations. I like deeper conversations. And that's exactly what I wanted to invoke when I first started my podcast, The Virtual Campfire. And in reality, I wanted it to be something that we could do in person. So virtual was the only thing that I could do because it was started in the pandemic, which
Uh-huh.
we all know how that plays out. But I did the best I could with what I had, and the story behind the virtual campfire was really wanting to bring people's stories alive. Like, how did people get to where they are, where they're making an impact, and how could I just understand the journey that they've gone on to reveal themselves? And I wanted to create an intimate space, and so that idea of a campfire just made a lot of sense. And so I was thrilled to do that. And it really has made a huge difference. I've now recorded almost 300 episodes, over 300 episodes.
Wow.
Yeah. And,
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I think one of
That is amazing. I'm about to hit 100, so I really know what it's like. So I applaud you.
Thank you. And I think the great thing is when you know that it's not just affecting, the listeners, but it's affecting the guests. The guests come on and they oftentimes I've heard people say to me, they're like, wow, like this has been the best conversation I've had all year. And I want to share with my kids. Or, things like, I have never explored this part of myself, especially on in recorded line, if you will. And then I'm like, that's pretty cool because I gave them a space for that to happen. And like that's where the campfire comes in. It's like this element of letting down the guard, being a little more vulnerable, but also feeling safe to do so. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's like you like turn toward the fire and like everything else is behind you. Right. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's really cool. So and then what's your other book about? Climbing the right mountain. Is it climbing the right mountain? Yeah, climbing the right mountain. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first book, and I love climbing mountains too. So as I'm sure since you're from Denver, from Colorado,
I love
was climbing the mountains.
Yes. Hmm.
Uh, but that book was I wrote that because I felt like I was hearing so many stories from people about like, oh, I'm just doing this because I'm staying in my role because it's comfortable, things are just the way that they are. I'm dealing with a challenging boss, but hey, I'll make good money if I stick around. And I'm like, well, that's not really a good reason for doing the work you do. And so it kind of challenges our whole definition of success. Like, how are you defining success on your own terms? Even thinking about why you got into the work you do, why you started to climb the mountain you're on, we have to take a step back, pause along the way on the mountain and say, okay, well, why am I doing what I do? It's not to say you're wrong for climbing the mountain that you're on, but making sure that you're enjoying the climb and that you are doing it for the right reasons. And so that's what the book's about, is just understanding, am I on the right mountain and am I doing it for the right reasons? And finding fulfillment along that path, knowing that it's not always going to be easy, right? I mean, growth is hard. We know growth and can be challenging. But if you're dreading every moment and you're just saying, I'll be happy when I get to the end, that's not going to work. Right.
Well, that's not life. Like, I mean, that's right. Like we're here for these challenges. That's like the Earth School or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't change, things change around you, or they change. They make you change. So you're forced to change if you don't change, right? So I got a deep question for you, since you seem to be very philosophical. So, so there's two. It's kind of two ways to look at it, like the Kantian view of, that you are the end in yourself, right? You're your own reason for existence, right? And then there's a Nietzschean view, which is kind of like, that there's only one thing that anyone should be good at, should be doing, right? There's one true meaning. And, if you, and I love his always his example of, if you're in Africa, you're born in Africa, but you were meant to be a great skier, then you're never going to have that mountain to climb. And that's, because he's a pessimist, or not a pessimist.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, what's the word I'm looking for? Having a senior moment, but you know what I'm talking about. So what are your thoughts? Like, are there multiple? Is everyone supposed to be just doing one thing? Is there one thing you're meant to do, or can that change and evolve? Like, how do we? Is it okay to be on one mountain and then decide, what, I'm not, I'm done with this mountain, I want to go to a bigger mountain? Or what are your thoughts on that? All that.
There are many mountains and we're meant for many mountains. And I think that's okay. And in fact, as I think about, speaking of mountains, the second mountain by, I think his name is David Brooks. And I could have that name wrong, but the second mountain is a wonderful book. And it really speaks to this idea as we get older and, we decide, oh, what am I going to do for this next chapter in my life? What are the things that I'm kind of planning for this next part of my life? And that's okay. We can challenge ourselves to think, okay, I've explored this path and it's been great. It served me well, but now that chapter's done. Now I'm ready for something different. And I think that's okay for us to have many chapters. It makes life more interesting. As people say about purpose, we don't have one purpose. We had multiple purposes. The key thing is we have to continue to be in action and take more risks to try things. But if the worst thing we can do is just accept what is and then stay stuck in that moment of saying, okay, this is because I've gotten here and this is what the path I've chosen. I have no other choice but to stick with it. Right.
Right.
So I think that's an important thing. You do have more options. We have more agency over our path in life.
Yeah, I think for me, it's always been, this what I'm most interested in or what I'm most passionate about is my clock or my North Star. It's like, okay, well, now I'm really passionate about this thing, and it means that I should do it. Right. And then when the passion starts to, dip a little, or maybe there's something, then I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's my higher self telling me that I should be doing this. Right.
Yeah.
And if you kind of can guide yourself in that way, even during the day, it can be an easy way to kind of help yourself align, is what I've found.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing, I don't want to like get too like, oh, keep on making changes all the time. I mean, the key thing is look for the signals, but don't throw everything away the minute something's not feeling right.
Right.
You kind of have to, and this is why I'm a big advocate for taking pauses. And when I say pause, there's different types of pauses along the way. There's pauses in the day that help you recharge, but there's also these step backs along your journey, maybe once a quarter or maybe a big one once a year, where you kind of reset your clock and say, hey, what am I doing that really is lighting me up? Is there something that I need to do differently? Am I on the right trajectory? Is there something that I need to recommit to? And then those are the kind of things that we need to start to challenge ourselves along the way to say, all right, I think it's time for a pivot, or no, I'm doing the right things. I just need to maybe make some small tweaks. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I can't just do it while you're doing it.
Right. So what do you do? What does Tony do for these little resets? Do you do like retreats, or do you go off your phone? You don't do social media. Like, what are some of your techniques for finding this pause?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's so interesting. Yeah, I love that you asked this question, because I have found that when I do this, it's often the funniest things. I get more business when I take a pause from my business. But I mean, my pauses are usually have to do with some kind of an adventure or travel. So best example, when I wrote my first book, Climbing the Right Mountain, one of my mentors, she's like, oh, what's the next mountain? And I'm like, I'm going to climb Kilimanjaro. And a year later, I was on the mountain and climbing the mountain. And I took a whole entire month off and went on safari in Tanzania. And all those things are great. I mean, not just, it was fun and challenging, but think about it this way. I was away from my business for an entire month, limited access to internet, because when you're on the mountain, you don't have internet.
Forget it. You might as well just forget about it. All right. That's
Yeah.
like when you're on a cruise. It's like, don't even try, to do internet, to do work.
Exactly. But when you're away, you start to think that's a moment for you to rethink, what am I doing? How am I, is this the right path? Am I, do I want to come back in the same way that I left? Those are the questions I'm asking. And, I did the same thing. I do the same thing almost every year, if not every other, quarter or so. I spent a month in India when I first launched my business,
Nice.
which most people would think is crazy. I spent a month with a guru, and I learned a lot. His name is David Jeet.
I think okay. Yeah.
And I was in an ashram where they had no internet and no phones. So
That must have been so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. But anyway, so I mean, those are the kind of things that you don't have to necessarily go far away to do this. And in fact, I'm writing a piece with a friend of mine about sabbaticals and how to design a really powerful sabbatical that will really make it meaningful, not just take a vacation. Yeah.
Nice. I like that. Yeah, I think that one of the things that I've decided to do this year is, because when what is that? There's a book about, when you start counting how many Christmases you have left, but potentially, right? I mean, you know what I'm talking about? It's like the calendar where it's like how many, when you start to get older. And I mean, I'm not so much afraid of aging. I think aging is beautiful, and I'm always celebrate getting older. And I think it's amazing, right? But it's like, you should really think about one thing that you really want to do, not accomplish necessarily, like, but kind of like you're saying, like, what is something that is really meaningful you're going to do, like travel, right? And I'm very fortunate because my father had a travel agency when I grew up, and as a result, me and my mom, my daughter, we do lots of traveling, and I'm half Swedish. I go back to Sweden every summer, and that's where I like to write books and in Sweden over the summer. But this year, I decided to do something for myself, right? And so I booked this Dr. Joe Dispenza 1-week seminar in Dallas. And I'm just like really excited about that. So I think it is. It's like, those experiences, while we get so caught up in this work and this, and the attachment to it really, those are not the things you're going to remember later in your life, right?
Yeah.
Is that one extra week of work that you did, and that one extra month. That doesn't really mean much when you start to look back to it, right? But that travel and that experience really does, I think you're right, set a new baseline so you can really look and inside and see what's there.
Yeah, and I think it's a good, almost like a good question for us to prompt people with, is like, what's an experience that you really want to have that's going to potentially change how you're looking at your life?
Yeah. Don't wait till you're retired,
Yeah.
because you may not get there. You might not make it, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
do it now. And I'm not saying go into debt to do it, but do it now, and they can be small things. I mean, I love the idea of like, if you had no money, what's something that you could do? Like we're talking about like going on a hike or, seeing the sunrise or something like that. And if you had all the money in the world, what would you do? And like thinking about those two different things are kind of, you can really create more meaning that's kind of out of the ordinary.
Yeah, I love that idea. I mean, just like, because people do get stuck in that the moment they think it's going to be some big thing, then they stop themselves and they say, okay, it's just not going to happen. And so I think what we need to do is give people permission to say, think small, start small, and then you can graduate to something bigger later on, but start small and get the taste of what it looks like to step away and feel that that wonderful awe and wonder that happens when you step away from your day to day and have an experience.
Absolutely. I love that.
Mm.
So, what are you most excited about for 2026?
Well, one of the things I'm most excited about is my next book, which is coming out. Well, the date is still tentative, but it's late spring, and it is called Illuminating Hidden Brilliance. And
Ooh.
so it's really something that I'm looking forward to putting out in the world and sharing with people. The idea is really around people sidelining parts of themselves and realizing that those very elements are what we need to bring back in. It's similar to the story about the dancer I shared.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing I'm really looking forward to. And I'll just add one other thing because there's so many, like, I think this year for me, it's been, well, the plan is to spend more time in community with people. I think last year I got out and about, but I feel like this year is an intentional sense of community and connection. And those two things are going to be important for me this year because I just feel like we need more of that. And so I'm building community, but also getting out and spending time in other people's communities too. So,
Yeah, I think that you're right. I think that that's the resonance that we're all kind of gravitating towards, especially with, I'm in tech, and marketing and
yeah,
things like that. But AI, and I always get the AI questions all day, like,
yeah,
oh,
of
no, oh,
course.
and it made me think. I saw this really funny cartoon, and I'll share with you. And it was a woman, and she's like on the ground, and she's like, because you can see she's working hard. She's got a vacuum cleaner, she's doing laundry, she's like scrubbing things, and there's, and there's a little sign that comes up is, AI is going to take your job. And she's like, when? You know, because when? Like, this is like, we don't want to, she doesn't want to do this, right?
Yeah.
But so I think that this is really, it makes us laugh, but it's the same kind of thing as what we're all going through is like the people are becoming so disconnected, with the cheap dopamine of the scroll, the constant
Yeah.
scrolling, right? They're just getting, I think, even more stuck. They're attracted to people's lives that aren't even real. I mean, I know I can tell you 100% that content, 60-70% is created by bots. And I can
Yeah.
create news. I can create, websites that people would think are news. I mean, it's just not that hard to do right anymore. And as a result of that, I think that authenticity and these real connections are the most important thing. And people are just going to need more and more of that as we start to seek to fill that missing void.
I love that you bring this up because it's also leading to a trust crisis too.
Yeah.
Because with that ability for us to generate news, fake news, let's call it. I mean, people don't know what to trust and what to see when they see something. They don't know what's real.
Right.
And getting people in person, not to say that every person you meet in person or in community is going to give you the truth. That's not possible, but at the very least, it's harder to tell someone a lie in person as it is to tell them a lie through the internet, because that you're not facing them. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you the spidey senses too, and you can feel it. It's like the lowest form of communication. Being a communication specialist, like texting. Even I always tell even my friends. I'm not a texter, but I'll text. But if it's more than like do you want to do like a very quick response? It's not as effective as picking up the phone and talking to someone, because it's the lowest form of communication. You don't get anything else. Now you're guessing, and reading instead of speaking or hearing are different senses even inside of your own body. If you were listening, you're like, what is she talking about? Go ahead and go to your social media feed and read a post you like, and then read it out loud and listen to yourself saying it and how it changes the feeling of what you're reading. Right. Because it's significant.
I'm going to try that now.
Yeah, try either write a text to someone and then read it out loud to yourself, and then see, and you're gonna be like, oh wait, like, is that really what I mean? Possibly, right? So it's just it's the evolution of communication, and of course that's all fine, but taking that time to like really meet someone face to face and be authentic and feel, use our intuition to feel if it's real or not real. And trust that, I think, is really going to become a skill of the future human that we are going to need even more than ever.
I agree. I love that. I love we're tapping into this, because this is it's so real right now, and it's such an important thing that we need to do better as a society. Really, I mean, it's not just a group of people. It's everyone has to do better, so we can connect better and create better communities. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Tony, how can people get a hold of you?
Oh, well, that's easy. The best place to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. So you can find me there. But the other place,
voice,
what's that?
a top LinkedIn voice. So as
You.
we would expect that to be one of the top ones. Yeah.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. The thing with LinkedIn is that I try to be add as much value as possible, and I try not to make it about me, and I think that's important, because it's a great platform, but it's a place where we can really share value and reach a lot of people, but in a way that really helps them to up level themselves. So I think LinkedIn is a powerful way. But the other place you can find me is at my website, Inspired Purpose. It's called iPurposePartners.com. And I have a new website I'm developing, which is called TonyMSpeaks.com, which is still in development, but it should be launched very shortly.
Good for you. Well, thanks so much for being here. And to all of my listeners and watchers, please join me next week as I interview another industry expert and topics to help you succeed on and offline. Big mahalo. We're just reaching 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, and it is just I'm so appreciative of my community for helping me achieve this milestone. Please continue, if you have not yet and you love this content, subscribe, share it with your friends and family, so that I can continue to attract other wonderful guests like Tony to share their visions and stories with us. I will see you next week in the Pixels. Aloha. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Covert Code Podcast. If you're loving the insights we share here, don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more digital innovators like you. Share this episode with your friends and colleagues on social media and help spread the word. And if you're in the solar space or just curious about where clean energy is headed, I'm thrilled to announce my brand new podcast, The Solar Coaster. This show digs into the real stories, trends, and challenges of the solar industry, with bold conversations and powerful takeaways you won't hear anywhere else. Follow the Solar Coaster now so you don't miss a single episode. Thanks for tuning in. See you in the Pixels. Aloha.